We're now going to focus on mindfulness, and I feel like I need to still my voice and be calm and gentle for this segment. It's been popular for a few years now, and I wonder if it has benefits and if they can stand the test of time. It's done in schools, workplaces, and I even saw somewhere the British parliamentarians doing it. Is it working? How does it work? And if so, where do you get started? Clinical psychologist Bradley Daniels joins us now to tell us all about it. Bradley, such a pleasure to have you with us again. Welcome. You know, when I think mindfulness, I just think of just this pose behind us there. I want to cross my legs and just sort of hold my hand like this and go,
Me too.
How does it work?
Okay, so mindfulness is one of the most basic interventions that you could help people with. So I'll give a basic definition. So really it's this simple, and this is the beauty of mindfulness, that it's very simple. So mindfulness is a practice of staying in the here and now without judgment. And that one line describes the whole body of practice. So it's that simple. Is it easy to achieve? With practice it becomes easier, but initially I think it's quite difficult for people. Because initially, as you know, we're in a world where we're working in an ever fast-paced environment, we're always rushing, and that we can't help. Traffic's not going to go away because you're a mindfulness practitioner. You're not going to not have stress in your life because you're practicing mindfulness. What you will do is you'll be able to withstand the stress in a better way by just staying in the here and now. So being present of everything that's happening around you in this moment. So it's about taking control of the mind, as we say. Yeah, so that's the basic sort of understanding of what mindfulness is. And I think the reason why people have the notion of this being the pose is because mindfulness does have some sort of basis or connection to meditation, obviously, and to also to the practice of Buddhism. Now, this is the caveat, that mindfulness is not a religion. Mindfulness is just a practice. As Buddhists would also say, Buddhism is a practice. And it's a practice of basically finding sort of your inner peace and sort of almost like your higher being. Because the higher being is meant to be calm, be filled with gratitude, to be in tune with what's happening in the here and now.
How different is it to meditation?
So meditation, if you're doing meditation and you're doing yoga and those kinds of practices, then you're already a shoe-in. Then you're probably using mindfulness without knowing the formal term.
Okay.
And the formal term is really not that important. So what is important is the practice. So meditation, what makes it similar to mindfulness, or what makes it a tool in mindfulness even, is that you are focusing on the breath. You're focusing on bringing your attention just to your breath. So that's what's similar in the two. And so meditation is one practice, which we would say is a mindfulness practice, but there are many.
It sounds like it's a coping mechanism to deal with outside stresses and pressures and that which we cannot change.
Well, I'd be very hesitant to use the word coping mechanism, because that sort of, it reduces it to a form which doesn't represent fully what it is.
Yeah.
So yes, does it help you to cope better with situations? Of course it does. But it's not something that people catch on to just because, oh, I need to cope better. But in fact, in this moment, it makes me laugh of a good friend who is a yoga practitioner. And the way she found yoga was so that she could party more. So she sort of, she learned yoga as a means to party more. She was a flight attendant and flew around the world.
Okay.
And she's like, I learned yoga to party more. And as a result, later she didn't know that she became quite a serious yogi master.
Wow.
So it's not just about, oh, I'm so desperate, I need to cope.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm doing. It, of course, can take you there. Like, if you are struggling, it can take you there. So, for example, clinically, when would we use mindfulness practice? So clinically, what the research suggests very strongly to us, empirical evidence, is that mindfulness is very useful in reducing and managing anxiety, also in reducing both the frequency of bouts of depression, but also the level of depth of the depressions. So it's not saying it's a miracle cure that you do one mindfulness sitting or practice and then you'll never be depressed again, or that your depression is going to go. It takes practice. It's been used with kids, especially kids who maybe struggle to concentrate and those kinds of, it's basically just teaching them to just focus on one thing. So whether it's kids or adults or any human being can use this form, and it's really, really, really simple. There's nothing complex about it.
Yeah, I mean, I was just saying in the intro there that even British parliamentarians were doing it. I mean, I think ours could also use a little bit of it as well, just to quell the tension in Parliament.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, so for example, when I do group work, and sometimes it's not even mindfulness group work, it can be group work related to anything else. I often just start the group off by saying, let's take 3 conscious breaths to bring us all into the room. And you'll be surprised how that very basic thing, I'm not saying let's do a mindful breathing, let's take 3 conscious breaths in through our noses and out through our mouths, and then thereafter you sense the silence in the room, and the group is kind of more ready to sort of hear what it is that you're saying. So, I mean, if we start our day like that, or we start our workplace environment like that, we definitely can go much further than what we would without any such intervention.
I can believe that, because in any setting when you go in, you're usually coming from to enter that place. So if I arrive at work, for example, I'm dealing with, oh my gosh, I had to start the car, and then maybe I left this and I forgot that, and and after work I need to deal with that. So you're entering the new space with baggage and hang-ons and thinking of the thereafter, that you're not fully present where you are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I mean, just to, and I always like to sort of show this to people, is that like it's something that I practice as well. So it's not something that I just talk about and it's something good to talk about. It's something I practice as well. I practiced it this morning, just getting here, settling into the studio space, finding my space here, getting used to what's happening here. So it really is just about, I'm here, I'm present, and to experience whatever's happening here in this moment. Now, this does not say that, oh, if you're, I think the skepticism that a lot of people have with things like mindfulness or any other new intervention that comes around, they often say, as somebody once said, a famous media person, until eventually he himself started to see the value, said something like, it's only for ponytails and suits. So ponytails being sort of what's the hippie type, and suits being sort of your sort of corporate people who sort of have all these other illnesses that we also sometimes say is fictitious, but it's absolutely not fictitious, like the yuppie flu and those things. Actually, what we're talking about is burnout. And once people experience mindfulness, they immediately see the value. And the reality is that in modern society, and with all the various pressures we have, we do have huge concerns with people burning out. We often are hearing a lot more about things like chronic fatigue syndrome. We're hearing about adrenal fatigue. Back in the day, we didn't have names for it, so we called it like the yuppie flu, which was kind of, some even medical professionals were skeptical and thought like, oh, this is not really real, like what's actually happening. And now we're seeing that it's very real. So mindfulness is very useful for helping us to just achieve overall wellness.
Yeah, and I'm glad you touched on the kind of people that can engage in this, and we're going to take a quick break, but before we do, I always get that stigma as well, that these are rich people problems, and this is something for clever blacks. Like, do you practically see a gogo in the township practicing mindfulness? Is this something that can be used across the board universally?
Absolutely. I have used it in many different settings. I remember working on the sort of mobile train clinic that goes around the country and works in rural communities, where, without calling it mindfulness, but you are teaching people just this technique. I've used it when I was working in correctional services, and I often use, and I used it in my practice often just one-on-one, just as a means to kind of settle people down, slow them down, because if you're not slow, then you can't really hear well.